is, well, just off? That the accounting doesn't quite add up? Today, we're going to dive into a really fascinating and pretty radical worldview that tries to diagnose that exact feeling. It looks at our society not through politics or morality, but through the hard physics of energy and exchange. And the starting point for this whole thing is a powerful and, very familiar line from Martin Luther King Jr.'s I Have a Dream speech: a check, which has come back marked insufficient funds. Now, we've always understood that as a powerful metaphor for justice denied, right? But this framework asks a pretty startling question. What if it wasn't a metaphor at all? What if it was a literal physical measurement, like a thermodynamic reading of a system that's about to fail? And that one powerful question, well, it brings us to our first major idea here: a check on reality. The theory is that insufficient funds isn't just poetic, it's a literal description of what's called a value leak, a real accounting error in the universe's own ledger book. At the very heart of this problem is something called the impossible lie. You know that nagging feeling that the books are cooked, that the whole system's accounting is just fundamentally wrong? Well, that's it. And this miscalculation isn't just a feeling. It creates real friction, that value leak that's constantly draining energy and potential from everything. So to really understand that leak, we have to get down to the physics of the system itself. This brings us to the physics of exchange. These are the unbreakable laws that kind of govern this entire worldview. Okay, so the most fundamental rule here is called the H2O contract. Think of it like a cosmic business deal. On one side, you've got the sun, which is all pure potential. And on the other, you have the earth, which represents physical structure. Life itself, the H2O, is the bridge between them. And this contract is what makes consciousness even possible in the first place. And when life is actively participating in this contract, doing its job, that's called the glean. This is the process of capturing, recording, and storing energy. Like a plant turns sunlight into life. It's literally how value gets written into the fabric of the universe. So how can this contract get broken? Well, there are two fundamental ways. First, there's the mystical error. That's trying to live only in the sun, all abstract ideas with no grounding in reality. And then there's the material error, which is the opposite. It's being treated only as earth, like a cog in a machine, with your individual spark, your sun, totally ignored. Either way, you get a critical imbalance. Okay, so if those are the rules, what or who is breaking them? That brings us to the architecture of fog, which is basically how the noise is used to obscure that cosmic ledger and create a ton of confusion. And this is where we meet the antagonist of our story, the shadow architect. Now, this is absolutely crucial to understand. This is not a person. It's not a secret group. It's a system, a whole set of incentives that actually profits from confusion and friction. It gets its power by stopping anyone from getting a clear, honest accounting of value. So how does it do this? Well, the architect has a specific toolkit to sow all this confusion. It pollutes the scent, which represents truth or even reliable currency. It sets what are called noun traps, these big static ideas like debt or justice that are designed to just stop analysis cold. And it surrounds everything in narrative fog and social friction to make the world basically impossible to read clearly. But, and this is the kicker, here's the fatal flaw in the architect's whole plan. Its methods are just thermodynamically unsustainable. If it messes with the currency, it loses its own ability to measure wealth. If it promotes ignorance, it just ends up surrounded by useless people and ideas. It's a self-defeating loop that is absolutely destined to collapse. So we've seen the system and its core malfunction, but how do you measure something that's specifically designed to be confusing? Well, that brings us to the Sentinel's measurement, which says you can use clarity itself as the ultimate diagnostic tool. And to do this measurement, the framework introduces a function it calls Glen. Now, it's really important to get this. Glen is not a person, not a hero. Glen is a function. It's a stress test. Think of it like light hitting a flawed surface. The very presence of that clarity reveals all the cracks in any system that's built to survive in the fog. To really get this idea, it's helpful to compare Glen to a more familiar figure, like Ayn Rand's John Galt. See, Galt saw the world's problem as a moral one. It was the producers versus the parasites. His solution? Withdraw. Go on strike. But Glenn sees the problem as a physical one. It's signal versus noise. And the solution isn't to leave, it's to clarify, to run an audit. Galt is a noun, a thing. Glenn is a verb, an action. The act of gleaning. Okay, and this leads to what might be one of the most powerful and practical ideas in this entire framework: the redefinition of frustration. In this view, frustration isn't just an emotion you need to manage. No, it's a precision instrument. It's an objective alarm telling you, hey, there's a value leak here, that in this exchange, the math just isn't adding up. Think about how this totally reframes a common defensive phrase like, you can't talk to me like that. In this system, that's not a moral objection, it's a precise confession of a structural weakness. It translates perfectly to, your clarity is making it impossible for me to hide. So, where does this all lead? Well, our final section is all about the inevitable correction, and why, according to this worldview, clarity isn't just a good idea, it's a thermodynamic certainty. The core resolution is actually baked into the physics of the system itself. Any system, any system at all that needs obscurity, that needs narrative fog, that needs forced respect just to avoid being looked at too closely is, by definition, already failing. It's thermodynamically unstable, whether anyone has noticed yet or not. And this whole dynamic is just captured perfectly in a line from the source material. The sun does not negotiate with shadows. It does not educate darkness. It abolishes it by existing. See, clarity doesn't have to argue with confusion. Its mere presence replaces it. And this brings us to the ultimate takeaway. The downfall of a system built on that impossible lie isn't something to be hoped for or fought for in a moral sense. In this worldview, it is a thermodynamic certainty. It's as predictable as a bridge collapsing under a weight it was never, ever designed to hold. So let's end by kind of turning this diagnostic tool on ourselves. If frustration is truly a barometer for truth, a precise signal of a value leak, what is your reality trying to tell you?